Hey guys, here at the farm today, we're going to talk about a pretty important piece of the puzzle when it comes to habitat improvements, hunting strategy, and your land in general. What we're going to talk about is logging. Is logging right for you? This time of the year, I get a lot of questions about that, pertaining to that on these client properties all over the country, because some properties, it's a fit. Some properties you have log value, and like I've said in the past, guys, I'm going to be the guy that's going to tell you along those transitions or that rim around the outside where we're trying to make that deer areas, whether it's we're managing for TSI or whether it's internal of the core of the property, where we have to go in and select cut that down a little bit further to get that good regeneration kick started, so you don't have to go in the center of the core for 15 or 20 years, and you can hunt that the same. So a couple of tips here for you. One, have a solid plan in mind before you reach out to a logger. What I always refer to my clients is this: if you start talking to a forester to begin with, especially any forester that is connected with the state, it's hard to sell the wildlife and TSI mindset as a bundle, if you will. So if it's a situation where the property that you have is enrolled into some federal or state program, then maybe they kind of have you in a corner, and you can only do certain things. But what I find is if you initially first reach out, and you have to, whether you're given a forester that you have to work with, or it's a forester that you are working with yourself, having a design for, if it's strictly focused towards whitetail and wildlife improvements, having that design set in place before you reach out to them is going to be huge for you. And the reason for that is it doesn't get any confusion about what is wanted in what areas. Now, like we always talk, guys, if you don't go into that first with a design and that mindset of a design, whether it's myself or somebody else, or one that you have collected the information, and there's a bunch of you doing that, that's why I release these videos for free out there for you, is to the folks that are watching and are willing and able to do these improvements that can be done, or these designs and the improvements. So if it's one of your own, just make sure that you have that set in stone. If it's one of mine, or you're following me, do the same thing. Make sure that design is laid out, and you have hopefully a combination of TSI and whitetail and whitetail and wildlife habitat connected. Can they be one? Yes, they can. Can they be separate on some properties? Most certainly. So the object for that is this: start with that forester, if that's what you choose. Go in and have them look into your plan and looking at cutting that per the design. I'm going to tell you right up front, guys, what happens most of the times is, whether that forester works for the logger directly or the forester works for the state, they're going to look at you like you're crazy, because they want to select cut. And I always use the example of a 40 acres. They want to select cut a 40 or an 80 from top to bottom, side to side, and they want us to get all the value out of it for you, or manage that for TSI so they can continue to get the value out of that. There's nothing wrong with that if you're managing for 4 boards per foot, but when you're managing for wildlife, it's very difficult, and it's the wrong step to take when we're talking about this, such as we are doing here on the property here in Kentucky. I'm not sure if you can hear them. They're kind of on a lunch break right now, but the loggers are here on the property, and they're cutting this per spec, not just willy-nilly, top to bottom, side to side, because what that does, guys, is that it's going to spread your habitat from top to bottom. You're always going to chase it. The only salvage is if you're able to, depending on how hard it's cut, you go in and mulch it. Can you make it work? Yes, you can. Some of the folks that are tuning in that are going to have some logging done this year before I can get to them, can we still fix it? Yes, we can, but we're doing that. We're fixing it. We're not creating it at that point. So there's a lot of cleanup. So I highly recommend that you kind of put the horse before the cart, not the cart before the horse, if you will, and really have that game plan and mindset going into that, because like I said, most of the time, most of those foresters and or a logger you know, and it's only right if you start with a logger, because I mean, I can understand that from them, because they're there to make you money. They're not there to kind of, you know, pick and choose where they're at. I understand that. But if you can have them cut it per the design, your labor part of it, like when we're blowing a transition in through mature timber, where that transition might have to be 20-30 feet wide, taller the canopy, wider the transition. Why does it have to be wide? Because you're dumping the sunlight down into that. This area behind me is a perfect example of that. We've got a bunch of red cedar here, you can see, and I'm going to be doing a red cedar extraction here on the farm this year, because it's choked off that whole ridge system behind us. Now, am I going to go in and totally eradicate the whole shelf down through there? Not at all. There's a bench in there. I've got the bench is actually mulched right now, about 10 foot wide through there, that we did last year. And I'm just going to go down through there, open it up to about 20 feet. So 10 foot on each side of that mulch trail that I have now, 20-25 feet wide. And I'm going to take these cedars out of there. And the reason for that is you can do that in a couple different ways, what we'll touch on here real quick. But you know, the reason you're doing that, again, is to dump the sunlight down into that transition area, and to have that moving food in browse. Now, you know, notice I'm not saying go through there and hinge cut that area, because we don't want, you know, unless it's outside of your stand areas and inside of the transition away from your access, then you can come back and return, you know, to do some hinge cutting and place some bedding pockets along there, which we'll focus on here as soon as this project's done here. We'll go over that. We've already went over on the whiteboard a couple times throughout the winter, you know, making these habitat pockets along the transition to really put that hunt in your favor, if you will, when they are cruising those, a cruising buck is cruising those pockets, so you can make sure, kind of manipulate that, if you will, so you can make sure that the wind is in your favor, and for, you know, as for his, which makes the huntability, the profitability through the huntability of that area really produce. Now, something to keep in mind, guys, the next step of that is, so after you have that hurdle and you really focus that with those loggers in that mentality, we want a rim around the outside of the property. Then that's where you want your TSI to be created. So like I said, can you have wildlife habitat in a cut, and can you have TSI on a property? Yes, you can. It just has to be in the right areas. You know, everything on the farm, everything on your property, what you're going to find is, the object is to find out what its job is and give it the right job and pull that power to the surface. Because if you give everything the same job, such as select cutting a 40 from top to bottom, you might just as well trying to hang a tree stand in the center of a flat cornfield, because you have nothing to steer deer, and you have, other than contour, hopefully, it's really difficult. Now, like I said, as it ages, you know, the first couple of years, there's no attraction to it from year 3 to 7. When you have, you know, up to 10,000, you know, 7 to 10,000, you know, shoots per acre of your poplar regeneration, and your hardwoods and your oaks and maple, or whatever is on your property, depending on your region, you know, it gets to a point, year 7 to 10, it becomes a food source. So if you cut that area too hard, and you listen, or you take the advice of most, and I'm not saying all of them, because it is changing slowly. A lot of the foresters, you know, obviously are hunters, and they're really understanding, because there is, let's be honest, there's a lot of consultants around the country right now that are, you know, hopefully recommending these improvements. Sadly, what I'm seeing, guys, is they're recommending go in and select cut the whole piece, and then, you know, fix this, fix that. It doesn't have to be that way. If you cut it per spec, if you cut it per design that you believe in, the horsepower of the logger can do 90% of your work. The rest of it is going in and doing a little cleanup and putting some debris where you need it to steer some deer, stuff like that. The reason we elected to cut here on the property is because last year, when I purchased the property back in July, we didn't have time to go in and get that done then. I just wanted to get my accesses. We worked on the accesses. I had Paul come in with the mulcher, and we went around, mulch the transition out, which was some benches, some trails, kind of opened some things up that were just so thick, and old areas where they took and were logging that they couldn't penetrate through. It hunted very well. I opened those areas up strategically. There's one part of it that we're going to actually bring into a saddle that I just went over with the logger here, that I couldn't really do much with it last year because of the debris, rock walls, stuff like that. Now we're poking a hole in it, and the whole piece of the puzzle is now is now coming full circle. So I have that 360-degree transition here on the property this year, and here where we stand is one of those areas where we're building the core now. And what I wanted to do is I wanted to have the logging done to fit that all within a time frame. So going into this fall, after everything, and it's going to be a couple year process for me because I'm on the road so much, right? And that's why I think I can connect with a lot of you. It's not something that I can do overnight. I could hire it done probably, not overnight, but within a short time. But I live, year to year, just like most other people do too. So trying to watch fundage and build the lodge and build the property and bring that to you guys. There's a lot of moving parts to this, right? So keep that in mind, guys. It's the process that you really want to focus on. It's the idea, it's the standard that you have to kind of have your property live up to. You just have to bring those jobs to the surface. One of the jobs that you don't want to bring, like I said, is don't let somebody tell you to select cut the entire 40 top to bottom. Now, there might be a bunch of logging done from top to bottom, but it's going to be in strategic areas. The outside rim is going to be managed for TSI. That's where you want. I've told some folks this in Alabama a couple of weeks ago. That outside rim is hopefully where your home is. Some cabins are built internal, and that's fine too. But if you're on the outside, you want someone to pull into your driveway. If you've got a big, beautiful or a big pine area or big oaks, you want someone that has never been to your property when they pull in to come to hunt camp with you, or just family to pull in and say, boy, that stand of timber is big and beautiful. That's the impression that you want in those areas, because usually big, beautiful timber is not perfect whitetail habitat, right? So if you keep that management area to the outside, that lets you get internal just enough to hunt that stand assemblage on those transitions that we're building. And then, like I said, taller the timber in your transition, guys, the wider that transition has to be blown out. And the narrower it is, maybe you just got to mulch it. Maybe just like a couple parts of the farm here in Kentucky we did last year, we just mulched it, poked a hole through it because it was so thick and nasty, and we're right into business. Immediately we're able to hang them licking branches then on that transition, and we're in luck. Where the diversity comes into it is not having diversity through contour and just a different diversion of things on the ground. Diversity is having the outside rim as TSI, bigger timber, the core maybe select cut or mulch, and then the transition select cut or mulch, and then the core of the property select cut down to that 14-16 inches to give you some usable, still keep some usable size to build those potential internal buck bedding areas, let's say, internal of the property. But if you go in and select cut it from top to bottom, not only are you going to lose your maybe stand trees that are ever so important. So that kind of ties into this, to go in, take some time, make sure that you take some time to go in and really, that's what we do when we're designing a property. I'm ribboning off the stand locations for you. I recommend if there's going to be any logging done, that folks even go to the extra mile, ribbon it, and then we paint it orange. So what I do, and you can, you choose any color that you want, but what I do, guys, is I paint my property lines out orange, and I paint anything out that I don't want cut in orange. Orange is bright, orange is very visible, that high vis orange. Paint them upside down, marking paint that we use. I paint all this stuff not to cut, such as the tree stand. Ribbon off the stands, paint the tree itself, and then obviously what I do is I go back after that's done, after the logger, make sure he doesn't cut that or hit your stand or take the stand tree out, and then I just go back with brown or black spray paint and take the orange eye deterrent away from it. A couple tips there for you to do, but if you don't go in ahead of time, you don't lay it out, you don't build something per spec, and then you don't cut it per spec, there's a good chance, not always, but there's a good chance you're going to return to the farm to start building the project with no stand trees. Then you're going to have to look at box blinds and box blinds only. And then the worst case scenario, like I said, guys, is the whole pinnacle of the worst case scenario. This scenario is having a property that's select cut from top to bottom, no edge other than contour, hope and pray you got contour at that point, because if right now, especially the way the log value is, everybody wants to come in and select cut it from top to bottom to get all the value out, put roads in it wherever they want to put roads in it instead of where you want to put the roads, with them to put the roads in, and before you know it, you've got habitat spread from top to bottom, and you will fight it. So do you have to fight it? No. Is it fixable? Yes. But if it's laid out kind of black and white, if you will, go in with a paint can, you do the lines you want them to cut out. If it is your transition, center yourself in the center of it with a paint can, paint that out like we always talk about, guys, and then they know 10 feet 20 feet each side of it, they're taking that debris out, and and the reason that it is. But instead of talking to them about a transition and a corridor and this and that, you just have it painted out and tell them to cut it per spec. Go over with them real quick. Keep it simple for the loggers. There's most of them are simple folks just like us, and when we start trying to mix it up and they don't want to fail, always remember that. The forester and the logger, forester alone, a little bit different situation, but as far as a loggers don't want to fail for their clients, because if they surely don't want to be caught in a lawsuit when they cut the wrong tree, right? So lay it out very black and white. You'll be happy, they'll be happy. But what it all stems from is a couple of things: laying it out, getting ahead of the game, taking time to do so, getting a concrete design that fits the property and also fits the huntability of the farm. And I think through those steps you'll find more success when it comes to logging. And there's going to be some cleanup, so be patient. Don't be the guy that's I've checked on these guys. They've been here a couple days. I've checked on them at noon and just kind of went back and looked at what they're doing, because at this point, if I had them start and it's now on my shoulders, if I didn't lay that out very black and white, I have no one to blame except myself. Because if it was in question, or you get a bad feeling with a logger before they even start, or they're really trying to persuade you not to do what you want them to do, don't have them start at all, and that's the way to cure it. So save yourself a lot of time and headache and cleanup at the end. Find the right person that's like we're using, David Miller here in Central Kentucky. Anybody wants his information, I'll get it to you. He's an Amish gentleman, does an excellent job. And already, and I've been pretty fortunate enough over the time to see a lot of loggers. I'm telling you, he really takes that into concern, or takes that into appreciation, what the customer wants, not what he wants. So, a couple things there, guys, and like we always say, take that one to the bank, and really maybe take a good profitable check to the bank through this video, right? But make sure it's laid out, it's cut right. You'll be happy, loggers happy, the deer are happy. Everybody wins. But if you start out with the wrong foot forward, if you start out with that old cart before the horse, there's only one person to blame, and that's yourself. Thanks, guys.